Okay, good evening and welcome to the February 24th, 2011 meeting of the Radnor Township Environmental Advisory Council. We are going to start off our agenda tonight by welcoming two new members to the EAC. We're just delighted to have them. The first is Steve Elliott with Environmental Systems Research. And the second one is Dan Meyer, Senior Project Engineer with Duffield Associates. And so what we want to do is we want to take a moment to let each of you kind of introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about yourselves and sort of your connection to Radnor and your interest in environmental issues. So, Steve, do you want to start?
Sure. Steve Elliott, glad to be here. I am a geographer by education, so majored in geography from Ohio Wesleyan University. Currently work for Environmental Systems Research Institute, or ESRI, or ESRI, as it's often referred to. But primary role is an account manager, consultant with our government customers implementing GIS solutions, often which those have to do with environmental projects. So a lot of core uses in environmental protection, land use, planning. Born and raised in Radnor Township, so graduate of Radnor High School. My father was a teacher there for 36 some years, and recently moved back into the township this past year, and have always wanted to be involved, and saw the vacancy and just thought it made a lot of sense that I had something to contribute. So definitely very excited to be here, very excited to be back in Radnor, and I'm looking forward to learning a lot and hopefully contributing a little bit.
Great. Well, we're delighted to have you. Thank
Thanks.
you. Dan?
Yeah, I'm Dan Meyer, 25-year resident of Radnor Township, and about 30 years experience in land development and watershed management. I'm a civil engineer and environmental engineer. Worked for Duffield Associates in downtown Philadelphia for about 6 years now. And my specialties are sustainable stormwater management and flood studies. And I know we have issues with that in the township, so I'm hoping I can bring some education there. I'm also very interested in the open space preservation, and also was active in the original referendum for the Radnor Trail, and would love to see sort of an expanded network of pedestrian bicycle routes in the township.
Excellent. Well, welcome, and we're looking forward to your participation. Okay, the next item on the agenda is our review and approval of our minutes. The minutes of our previous meeting from January 27th, 2011 have been distributed for review. Does anyone have any corrections or changes to those minutes? No? Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second that.
Great. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Great. Any opposed? Great. Minutes are approved. Thank you. And want to thank Sloan for taking minutes tonight in Anne's absence. We really do appreciate that. Okay,
Big
great.
shoes to fill, Sloan.
All right.
I mean, not literally big.
All right, very good. Thank you. Okay, next item on the agenda is announcements, and we have a few of them tonight. I wanted to just remind folks on the EAC who have been with us for a while, but also to the new people, we have on April 9th, Saturday, April 9th, there's going to be the 14th Annual EAC Network Conference that's put on by the Pennsylvania Environmental Council, who sort of acts as a coordinating agency for a lot of the EACs, and once a year they put on a conference. They have educational sessions. It's a chance to network with other EAC members. It's going to be held locally over at Villanova University this year, so if anyone is interested in attending, I think it's a good thing to have at least one person from our EAC attend. I've done it in the past, and it's been a terrific resource. You sort of bring a lot of knowledge back to the EAC. It's usually a morning into the early afternoon, and actually Josh was involved in the planning of it last year and attended as well, and spoke at it. So if anybody is interested, please let me know. I think that would be great to have somebody there if we can do it.
What day is that?
Saturday?
This Saturday?
No, Saturday, April 9th. And you can probably find information on the PEC website, but if it's not there, Keith, and you're still interested, let me know and I'll get the information to you, okay? All right. Okay, I also wanted to note, since it's the beginning of the year and new schedules are coming out for things happening this year, I wanted to announce the household hazardous waste collection schedule for Delaware County. The first event is going to be on April 9th, and that's going to be down at the Emergency Services Training Center in Sharon Hill. They're going to have, four dates this year. It's going to be April 9th, May 7th, September 15th, and October 15th. So as spring starts to melt some of the snow, you're thinking about doing spring cleaning, it would be a really nice opportunity to kind of get rid of some of those materials. And they also, I think it's important to note that they also take computers, printers, scanners, fax machines, portable TVs, which will be accepted on all of the dates except for the May 7th date. So, good to think about that as you're starting to clean up.
What were those dates?
There you go. Okay. Right here. Okay. Terrific. Thanks. Okay. Then I also got an email today from EPA Region 3, and I thought this would be a good announcement to share with you. The flower show is coming up, the Philadelphia Flower Show. Some of you may be regulars at that, but EPA Region 3 typically has a booth there and a display, and I wanted to share with you their announcement because it's a really nice opportunity if you're going to the flower show to stop by the EPA booth, see some of the sustainable gardening that they have there, maybe get some ideas that you can bring home. So let me just share with you. EPA says we've used this venue since 1993 to educate gardeners on techniques that protect the environment and at the same time create beautiful gardens using native and recycled materials. Our flower show team of volunteers designs, constructs, and creates an exhibit vividly demonstrating the beauty and practicality of native plants, sustainable water use, and beneficial landscaping techniques. So this year, the theme for the flower show is Springtime in Paris. So the EPA exhibit is going to be called Botanique Naturelle, loosely translating to natural garden, and it's going to focus on the importance of native plants, wetlands, and watersheds. It says visitors will see an exhibit which showcases the rich diversity of the native flora of wetlands and woodlands and depicts how people can use these plants to create a sustainable home garden. We've certainly been talking a lot about sustainability at all of these meetings, so I would encourage anybody that's going down to the flower show to make sure that you stop by the EPA booth. And just to note that the flower show runs March 6th through the 13th at the Pennsylvania Convention Center. Okay. And that is all the announcements that I have, but does anyone else have announcements about events or presentations that may be coming up? Okay. For our new members, you should feel free to, when you see events that may be of interest, sustainability related or environmental related, to bring them to the meetings and share those with the group. Okay, thanks. Okay, next item on the agenda is our work group reports and discussion. And our first work group is the Climate Protection Work Group. Right, going down. And Josh Hilbert has been heading us up on that. I've been working with him together with Robin Mann. But he's been doing most of the heavy lifting and trying to pull together a first draft of our climate change greenhouse gas action plan. And will share with us some information that he has on that.
Thanks, Brenda. So I guess before I start, I wanted to talk to you actually before the meeting, but since we don't have time. But,
okay, go right ahead.
I wanted to know what you thought about how we should present what we've finished to date. Is this kind of like it's an informational presentation? This is some ideas we have for our greenhouse gas action plan, and here's a little bit of the background behind each idea and what we mean by it, and sort of leave it at that? Or is this more of a discussion?
Well, I guess now would be a good time to get some input on it. So in order to prepare a greenhouse gas action plan, our thought is we'll probably write up a one-page description of each action item and how we think it ought to be implemented. But that's, you know, a lot of work. So we're taking it step-by-step fashion. And so what Josh has put together based upon meetings with township personnel, Radnor Township School District, a variety of folks, kind of put together a list of action items. And what we'd like to do is just go over those, have some discussion. If anybody has thoughts that, oh, this is a really good one, we should really keep that as a priority item, it would be good to hear that. Or if people think, oh, you know, that's going to be a lot of work and we're not going to get very much in the way of greenhouse gas emissions, maybe that should be lower priority. Or if you have questions about it, we'd really appreciate it, because, you know, the next step is to develop it further, and then, you know, we'll roll it out, you know, to the commissioners, to the public, to the township staff. But we're trying to develop this in a way where we can kind of bring it back for some discussion each time as we're moving forward from step to step.
Yeah, and I think this would occur over a period of months.
Right.
I'm not saying 6 months or 8 months, but, you know, 2 months or 3 months, something like that, I think is appropriate, especially when it comes time to develop more detailed information about an item that we think is going to make the cut. Some of these, I have 22 on this list, and some of these clearly are not going to make the cut at the end of the day. These are this is just a brainstorm, and certainly at this meeting or the next meeting, we'd encourage people to add new ideas if they have any, so it could be explored briefly to see if it has any legs. And but like I said, there's 22 here, so I'll try to stay fairly brief, and if anybody wants to comment on it, just feel free to jump right in.
Hey, Josh, before you start, the ultimate goal here is pushing recommendations through to get approved by the board to have these actually implemented. Is that the end
Right.
game?
That's right. Yeah, we're going to, at the same time we develop this action plan, we're going to develop a goal in terms of how many tons or what % of our emissions that the township emits do we want to reduce.
Okay.
So if we come up with a goal of 30% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, we need to have a plan on how we're going to do that. And that's what this plan is the beginnings of.
Okay.
And perhaps the other important thing to understand too is that this will be a certain percentage of greenhouse gas reductions from our baseline, which was a 2005 baseline. So what we had done previously was prepare an emissions inventory using the most up-to-date data that we had at the time, which was really 2005. So against that baseline, we're going to be setting a goal. So some of the things that Josh has here, we've already accomplished, which is good.
Great.
And so we've already made some progress. And so as you go through that, you may want to say, well, we've already started on this, but we want to go a little bit further and give that context as well.
Great.
Yep. And the rightmost column in the spreadsheet that you see on your screen, and by the way, if you just click your monitors on, you'll be able to follow it along the screens. The rightmost column has the implementation period, and that'll sort of suggest whether it's a long term project, a short-term project, whether it's already been implemented, et cetera. So on the leftmost column, I'll have the number of the measures. The first one is number 1, create the Radnor Municipal Green Team, for example. The next column is how much we estimate that the implementation of this item would cost the township. The second column, or the third column in this case, estimated annual energy savings, is the amount of dollars per year that we believe this item would save the township in energy costs. The next column is estimated emissions reductions, which we're going to be measuring in tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year. So that is basically tons of greenhouse gases per year that the specific item would eliminate. And then the next column is called percent of total reduction goal, and this is a column that's in progress of being updated constantly. We're going to set a goal for the township. I have a hypothetical goal at the top of the spreadsheet showing 2,870 tons. I think that number represents 30% of our emissions, and yes, 30%. 30% of our 2005 emissions. And so the percentages in that column represent what percentage of that goal does this one particular item represent. Okay, and that's an important one because that sort of gives you an idea of What's the scale of this item? Is this, if it's only 1% of our goal, is it really worth spending a lot of money or a lot of time on? However, if it's a large item like the item number 7, 43%, then this is one that we ought to look into very closely and explore and consider putting it at the top of the list, top of the priority list. All right, so one at a time. Number 1, create the Radnor Municipal Green Team. If you follow along on the text section of the report, it gives a little bit more explanation of each item. For this one, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will just give you a summary of what I believe it to be. And Brendan, you can jump right in. This is a team that would be comprised of employees, township employees. Maybe not necessarily only employees. It might be stakeholders as well that might not be full-time employees. I'm not sure, but these are people who would have interest in and direct, I guess, their job would have some effect on items that would be of environmental importance in terms of greenhouse gas reductions. Brenda, why don't you just off the top of your head, what do you think the team would be?
Right.
Like?
I think the team would be the people at the township, that it primarily would be employees, because these are people that have day-to-day knowledge of, sort of their operations, whatever they're responsible for, and ways that perhaps they could save energy, and then that would equate to some greenhouse gas reductions. So certainly folks that have, responsibility for, the energy use, like people with facility type operation, that would be important. People that have responsibility for, like IT, because that's so critically important in terms of identifying opportunities at the township. Folks responsible for maintenance, because if we're generating a lot of greenhouse gas emissions through some of our maintenance activities, we'd want to have people that have primary responsibility for areas that have been identified through our greenhouse gas emissions inventory as generating greenhouse gas emissions. But I think the idea would be, in addition to having those people that do have authority, decision-making authority, that we'd also perhaps invite people, employees, that may not have that authority but really are keyed into this and are really interested in that, they think they can make some difference. Because sometimes I've found, certainly in my practice, it's not necessarily the person that's in charge of a unit that always has the great idea. So if there's others that are interested in being on the team and want to be on the team, I think that's a terrific resource. But we also have to have some of the decision makers in order to make it be an effective group for making something happen.
So I guess in a sentence, this group, we understand who would be comprised of, but their primary task would be implementing this action plan. Right. So they'd be implementing the action plan, adjusting the action plan as we go, because as you said, it is a living document. Over the years, we might be changing things on this. So these people would be able to develop policies that would help implement items, or policies that would help change an item if we decide it needs to be modified later on.
And we can serve as a resource for those people, but we really need the people that are working at the township to be the ones that are thinking about this and making sure that it's implemented, because those of us that are not here on a day-to-day basis aren't going to have the real impact.
So the implementation of this plan really is going to be the most important part of our efforts in reducing greenhouse gases. If this plan is not worth, it's actually a net positive greenhouse gas emissions, because all these paper we printed out, right? So unless we get this thing implemented correctly, this thing won't stand up to our hopes and goals. And Brenda and I have been talking about how to fill in some of these blanks on this spreadsheet. So for the Radnor Municipal Green Team, the team itself, the people don't emit greenhouse gases that we're interested in. They don't. The people aren't costing money standing there, but they will be able to help implement these goals. So they will be able to save greenhouse gases and save the township money. So it's going to be kind of hard to fill in the data on this particular item in terms of how much this is going to cost to implement, how much it's going to save.
And because they may be coming up with new ideas that are not on the plan, but that are consistent with the
Yeah.
plan. And so then there may be things to fill in there,
Sure.
that they've reduced greenhouse gas emissions beyond what we had anticipated through some of these other things.
So we spent a lot of time talking about that one item, but I believe that having a core, a group in this team that's passionate about it and that has responsibilities like Brenda described is very important. Does everybody understand that that team, that item? The second one is create a self-funding green projects budget or green projects account. This was somebody's idea that I thought was quite interesting. It was
I think Robin's idea.
Is that Robin? Yeah. Nice to have you back again, Robin. This account or this budget would be funded by the dollars that other projects saved. So, for instance, if we did a lighting project that saved $10,000 a year, instead of that $10,000 sort of going back into the general fund or the utility fund or whatever you might say, those savings would be pushed over into this self-funded green budget. And then those funds could then be used to fund new projects. So it's kind of it would be like a self-perpetuating project budget that I'm not sure if we would fund it right off the bat with fresh money or whether we would wait to receive savings. That doesn't really matter, but the cost to implement such a budget would be very low, if not nothing, and would help. We'd be able to see an accounting of the dollars that these projects were saving, which would be very valuable and very important to track to show progress.
I think it'd be nice to see their, I don't know if this is getting too in the weeds with it, but from the account, if you'd want to do 100% transfer of the savings, I think it'd be also nice to see, 80% of savings cost goes into the Green Team Fund, which still results in a net savings for that operational unit.
I see. So it doesn't have to be 100%.
Yeah, just
it
an
could, It could
idea.
be a 50-50 share or something like that, yeah, or some percentage share.
I think instead of perhaps doing a separate fund with the attendant bookkeeping and adjustments and the board having to act over and over, it might be better to develop a cloud balance sheet so that at the end of the year you could say, I think we saved $118,000. Can we now do 5, 6, and 7? Because if you do it piecemeal or you have to segregate the funds, I think that's going to become a difficult process.
Yes, definitely can see that happening. Number 3 is develop and implement operational changes to our existing street lighting system. Actually, the next 3 are all involving street lighting. And I decided to break them into 3 because we have an existing street lighting system that can be tweaked right now. It can be adjusted to save energy. And those adjustments would not cost money, would not involve replacing fixtures. Those adjustments could be having to do with timer settings or on-off adjustment settings. Currently, most of our streetlights, I believe, come on and off with a daylight sensor, and then they go back off again with the same daylight sensor. So it's dusk to dawn. So there are some things you can do to those sensors, or those sensors could be adjusted such that you're not go ahead and replacing the whole street lighting system. We've seen some of them have come on. Some of them that are available on the market come on with dusk and then are only on for a certain amount of time, or go back or go off at a time of day. So for instance, 1 a.m. These are the kind of things I meant by operational changes to streetlights. And I'm just going to roll right into the next one. The streetlights that we have are of all different makes, of all different technologies. There's some that are incandescent, some that are mercury vapors. We have an inventory of every single streetlight that the township operates and owns. That inventory was up to date at one point in time, and the township staff try to keep it up to date. But there is a very good chance that is not totally up to date, And our PICO bill is based upon what kind of lights we have and what power those lights are. There's no meters anywhere that tell PICO how much energy we're using. It's all based upon this inventory that we maintain. So that inventory is critical to our paying the right amount of money on our street lighting bill. And also PICO makes some assumptions in terms of how many hours per day that each one of our street lights operate at. So if we make some operational changes that change how much our street lights run, well, we need to make sure PICO knows that so that we're not paying for lighting that's not on.
Does PICO take into account that certain lights are fluorescent and certain lights are incandescent?
They do, yep. They have sort of a payment factor system that based upon the wattage of the light, the type of the light, and how long that light runs. There's about 1,400 lights in our inventory. So it's a big document. And I'm not sure how often we update. I know that the guys here at the township update it constantly, but I'm not sure how often we update PICO with our list. And I think it's important that before we go ahead and propose spending big bucks on a street lighting project, we really ought to know, are we paying the right amount now? And as these incandescent fixtures burn out, like the one in front of my house, it's one of those old screw-in light bulbs. Literally, you just screw it right in. As they burn out, the guys come by with their replacement. They're called Cobra heads. So it's the whole fixture that bolts onto the pole with a new light that I think it's I want to say mercury vapor, but I'm not positive about that. So PICO still thinks there's an incandescent light there, even though next day there's a mercury vapor. So that rolls right into the big project, which is upgrade all of our street lights to an energy efficient technology, and the most talked about energy efficiency technology in street lights right now is LED technology. And they've made a lot of strides lately, and there's some pretty exciting replacement projects in I was going to say LA, but I don't think it's LA. It's right there by LA anyway. But anyway, some of the biggest cities have retrofit projects that they've completed, and there's some really good case studies out there that we could learn more about. It's a big project. It's very expensive. It has a potential to save quite a bit of greenhouse gases and our PICO bill, which would be based upon this new technology, or the new wattages.
Can I ask a question since you're going
Yeah.
through some of this?
Sure.
You want to stand in front of the microphone? Or
Right,
I'll
because
just-
otherwise the people
I'll
on the
repeat your
TV
question
can't.
if you'd like.
Yeah.
Okay, if you'd like to do that, or I can talk.
Come on up.
Yeah, I was just curious to know, in regards to the streetlights, if the mercury vapor versus the incandescence is about the same energy saving percentage as what you find in household incandescents versus CFLs. And then if we are using a lot of mercury vapor lights on the streetlights, do we have a program to dispose of them properly, such as the household hazardous waste disposal process? Well, how are these disposed of then?
I might have spoken too soon when I used that technology, mercury vapor. There are other technologies. High pressure sodium is another lamp technology, and I think metal halide is another one. But I can't remember what they've standardized on here at the township. But there is a technology that they have standardized on. It is what they replace all the burnt out or the broken lamps with. And I don't know how they dispose of them, but I know the guy to ask, Dan Malloy, and our public works guy.
All right, so we can find out
We'll
that
find out,
information.
yeah. And in terms of the efficiency of these lamps, they are more efficient. No, it's not the same as going from an incandescent to a compact fluorescent. There is some energy efficiency boost. I'm not sure exactly what that is. But to develop a street lighting replacement plan, we would need to have a professional. I would think we would need to have a professional firm come in and do an inventory or do a large-scale proposal, and that's something we don't have on hand. And if a grant came up, a state grant or whatever came up that offered to pay for something like that, we wouldn't be ready right now. And I think it's important that we start moving forward so we would be ready to grab those dollars.
Right, and we've talked, probably last year, we were talking about seeing if we could find somebody who might be willing to come in and put together a proposal at their cost. And granted, most people want you to pay for that, but some people, are willing to do it at their own cost if they think that there's a good shot that they might get the work. So we may want to try to push that forward, that idea forward a little bit, because I know you've said that before. We're just not going to be ready if a grant opportunity comes open, and I agree.
Yeah.
So we may want to put that on our priority list for this year.
Any questions about streetlights?
Yeah, I just wondered on, have you looked into feedback from any areas that are using these kind of streetlights in terms of
How they look?
compare, how they look, how
Yeah.
they do in all weather?
Yep, there's case studies out there, and I've read one or two, and they are getting better. They still have some problems. They're still very high cost right now. So as the volume of the demand on these fixtures increase, the cost is going to come down. I think Bucks County teamed up with a neighbor. I want to say it was some townships in Bucks County teamed together, and they got a grant to do some LED fixtures. I'm not sure if they've been implemented yet, but we can find out. Some local townships, and I think it'd be great if we could get a few installed. Just start off with put a couple on a high visibility intersection or shopping area, and we could
That might
people
make
could see
a
what
lot
they
of
look
sense
like.
to see
Yeah.
how good they are visibility-wise, in all weather, snow.
Have a
Yeah.
field trip.
Yeah.
People are
Test
curious
it.
about what they look like. We have 5 in a row.
Right.
You get an idea what they look like compared to 5 traditional ones. Traffic. By the way, I have some estimated energy savings there of $90,000 a year. Some emissions reductions estimations of 349 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent per year, and that helps us achieve about 12% of our hypothetical goal. Those numbers I have on this spreadsheet are ballpark estimates that I've put in here only to see if my spreadsheet was working correctly. B, that I could get some kind of a general, and I give you guys some kind of a general idea of what's the scale of this project. And I got some of this, I'm not going to tell you every time where I got some of this data. Some of it I got from case studies, some of it I got from manufacturers' websites, some of it I got from Haverford Township's greenhouse gas action plan that we're so fond of. They did a good job.
Josh, before you move on, just want to know if you could repeat it, just with streetlights, if there's any effort to try and do something to reduce nighttime light pollution
Mhm.
from streetlights, especially in this new the new Wayne train station is just a glaring example of light pollution, and I think it'd be great if maybe we could combine reduction of light pollution along with any energy savings.
Yeah, there's
Why don't you repeat that in the microphone?
Yeah, there's a question about the light pollution aspect of street lighting, not just the energy efficiency aspect of it. And there indeed is a standard out there. I'm not sure if it's actually a technical standard, but there's a program called the Dark Sky Initiative, and you can find fixtures, not only street lights, but you can find wall sconces for your garage or your front door that are dark sky approved. And I'm not sure if that's going to ever end up being a technical code or whatever. But yes, you can. There's things called zero. There's a term called cutoff that describes how much light goes above the horizontal of the fixture. There's full cutoff and partial cutoff, and so yes, that would be I totally agree that would be a very important part of doing a specification when it comes time to developing a project, a replacement project, and really it probably ought to be a part of our purchasing now, even if we aren't buying LEDs. So traffic signals are similar in that the old technology was incandescents, screw-in incandescents on our red, yellow, and green signal lights, and from 2007-ish to 2009, or somewhere in that ballpark time frame, the township has gone ahead and converted all of our red and green traffic signals to LED, excuse me. All the yellows are still incandescent, believe it or not, because the yellows are only on for 4 seconds. The reds and the greens are on for a longer time. So I'm not sure if as they burn out, the yellows are replaced with LEDs or if they're still replaced with incandescents. I think that's something we could look into, but I'm showing that this is mostly implemented, and I believe it's almost totally implemented. This project is finished, and it achieved about $10,000, $11,000 in energy savings each year. The item 7 is an improved household recycling rate. This is, I say, is partially implemented in that we have begun a what do you call it, a combined stream, single stream, thank you, single stream recycling campaign here in the township. The idea is we can get more people to recycle because it's easier, you don't have to segregate. More items are now accepted in terms of the numbers on your plastics. So this is partially implemented, and we are looking forward to the data on this. Our first full year is now up on that. And as these months progress, people's participation in this program are going to keep on growing, we hope. So we look forward to, in the next month, having some data on how our first year went and how this 43%, which is what I had estimated the improved household recycling rate item could get us towards our goal. We have real data on that. We have a tonnage of, we know how much tonnage of waste we send to the incinerator. We know how much tonnage of recycled materials that we used to send to the recycling companies, and we will know soon how much we sent in the past year to be recycled. So it's quantifiable, and I'm hoping we have some good news toward that, toward our goal.
I have a question, and by chance I have the document that has the edits, and it mentions here that, you know, at one point you were going to include the phrase penalties for failure.
Yeah.
Because I've been a township resident since 1977, and when this was first implemented, there were warnings and penalties if you didn't recycle.
Well, I guess the euphemistic term would be incentives to recycle, right? So what I was saying is in helping to improve our rate even further, we can brainstorm on some ideas on how to do that, and one of the ways to do that would be to incentivize recycling by saying, well, if a collection guy were to come out to your curb and find recyclable materials in your waste can, or that some action could happen, like they refuse to pick up the trash, they refuse to pick it up, or they leave you a note, or leave you a $5,000 fine. No, I'm kidding about it. But you know, some kind of a incentive to recycle better.
Right, and actually that was my edit on scratching out the penalties, because I really wanted to be positive about this and see if we can find positive ways to make these things happen rather than negative ways, if we can.
Do you like incentivize better?
Well,
I like it better.
With my children, I find sometimes positive works a little bit better than negative.
well, and as an example, we've talked about the recycle bank
Right,
model,
acts,
where
yeah.
they do credit residents of various areas with really rebates they can use in their local stores for
Starbucks. People will do
and
anything
others.
for a free cup of coffee.
That's right. That's right. So that's one example that we could look at.
And since it's such a big item, I think everybody ought to think about this one long and hard. Just so you know that our greenhouse gas emissions come from the fact that our waste is incinerated. So it's not just actually the carbon that's part of the waste itself, but they have to add then fuel to that too to burn it. And it is converted into electricity, so we do get a benefit from this waste, but it's a giant component of our greenhouse gas emissions. I think it's somewhere around a quarter of our township's inventory is waste.
And you were working on trying to get the data from the township on what our numbers are this year, now that we've had about a year of single-stream recycling under our belt, and see if maybe the numbers have changed, and that may actually show some significant improvement. I guess we're all hoping for that.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Josh, we may want to add a goal of reducing the tonnage that goes to the incinerator as another component, because we can model what that benefit would be.
Yeah, waste is one of those components of our inventory that does have a household component to it. Everything else in the inventory is only township-owned properties, township-owned buildings, but the waste is primarily residential waste that the township collects. So you're right that we could actually put another one in here that has something to do with reducing the amount of waste, not just increasing recycling, but reducing waste. And that would involve education probably or something like that.
Keith has a,
I would just suggest, if you want some information, I was listening to a presentation from a representative from San Francisco, and apparently they have the nation's leading recycling rates and the lowest amount of waste disposal. And so you might find some good informational programs that they're doing on their website.
Okay, great,
Thanks.
thank you.
I'll spare you this 40-minute.
Okay.
Speaking of minutes, Brenda, so how
Yeah, well, we are going to start losing people, actually.
All right.
A few people have to leave early, so I think you still should
you want?
go.
We can break this up into different meetings if you'd like. You
Yeah.
want to do the first, third, and
Mm-hmm, okay.
what do you think?
So you got 22, so you're already through the first third.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't we do,
I'll tell you what. I'll do one more
yeah,
because it's the last one in recycling.
Okay.
Go ahead. What you were going to say?
yeah, I think that sounds good. Why don't we do that? I mean, I don't want to slow your process down in terms of, moving this from a list to some, larger discussion item.
Well, is there a way we can incorporate some off meeting discussion
Right.
on this somehow to show that by the next meeting we can have some input to the first 7 we did and then go on and present the next 7 or something like that?
We can do that. And I think I would encourage all of the EAC members, you received this by email. If you do have comments, questions, anything like that, please send them to Josh, and then we can incorporate them as we continue to work forward. Yeah, why don't we try to do that?
Okay.
And actually, at our next meeting, let's try to get through all of it at the next
Yeah.
meeting.
It'll
so
go
we can
faster
kind of-
next time.
Right.
I won't have to explain the basics. So the last one is yard waste recycling. This is also implemented. The township now does collect yard waste at the curbside. So if you're not recycling your yard waste now at the curbside every week, except for holiday weeks, you should be doing that. There's another example of recyclable materials in the waste stream that I would hope that in the future would not be collected at the curb or would not be collected during household waste days. So no bags of leaves during trash day kind of thing. So anyway, this is a great program. We are really lucky to have this, especially in the spring and the fall when you have so much yard waste developed. This is excellent. And now the township has a grinder that they own. All this stuff is ground up into a fine material that is then composted and then made available back to the residents again. And so it's a great program. It's now fully implemented as of this past month, and 4% of our reduction goal right there.
I'm loving the program.
I'm loving it.
Yeah.
But thanks for the opportunity to tell you, and then next month we'll wrap this up.
And thank you for all your hard work on this, Josh. We really
Thank you.
appreciate it. You're doing a
Really
fabulous
great
job.
job.
Thanks.
Okay, you know what, we're going to next turn to sustainability, but we're going to take our topics out of order a little bit because I want Sloan to have the opportunity to present on the topics that he's going to cover before he needs to head out of here in about
Okay.
5 minutes.
Thank you very much, appreciate it. So I'm going to give a little update on WaterSense, which is an EPA program that Radnor Township joined as a promotional partner last year. And our job as promotional partners is to help get the word out about water conservation and efficient products for home and business use, as well as to provide tips for saving water. And so each month I will give a tip, at least as long as we still have a few tips left.
We'll have plenty of tips.
We have plenty of
Right.
tips so far, but so for this month, from the EPA site, their tip is that the challenge we face is that leaky faucets that drip at the rate of 1 drip per second can waste more than 3,000 gallons of water each year. So if you're unsure whether you have a leak, read your water meter before and after a 2-hour period when no water is being used. If the meter does not read exactly the same, you probably have a leak. So that's the tip for this month.
Excellent, thank you, sir.
And also note that WaterSense runs a Fix a Leak week each year. It's coming up early March, and they have lots of information on the site, which we can access through the Green Radnor page on tracking down and fixing leaks.
Terrific.
So with that, and I'll also note that we did submit our WaterSense annual report to the EPA as they request as a promotional partner, outlining the activities we did in terms of education, getting brochures out, the fall festival, and other things. So I think that's it. I will also note that at your request, Brenda, I tracked down the Energy at Home educational video, which we hope to receive in the next couple of weeks. It's got a lot of information about doing home energy audits and greening your home. And our hope is that we get it and can have Radnor broadcasted on the Radnor
Right,
channel.
and if we get it before the next meeting, we can show it at the next meeting.
Right.
Right.
That's a great idea. So
Okay. And then also you had submitted to
That's right.
Melissa.
that's right. I did incorporate the comments from the last EAC meeting for our Greening Your Home, How to Green Your Home webpage for the Green Radnor page. So thanks for those comments, and Melissa hopefully will have that posted shortly.
Very good.
And please do visit it and test the links and see if there's good info that you see there. And if you have any suggestions, we're going to hopefully keep it live. And so if you have ideas for something that might fit, please let me know. We'll update it hopefully regularly.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Okay, that's fine, thanks. Okay. Back up to sustainability series on the agenda, just to note that we did have sustainability series program on Monday, January 31st that addressed conservation development, lightening the footprint of growth, and that was a terrific program. And I think it's going to be included up on the website, so if you missed it, you ought to be able to view it on the website, talking about some of the things that we might want to think about here in Radnor Township for sustainable growth and sustainable development. Matt Bauman from the Township was a speaker to kind of give us a sense as to what our codes are now and how they developed. And then we had some other folks in Ann Hutchinson from Natural Lands Trust, Chip Vaughn, who developed Traymore, and Jim Wendell Gass from West Vincent Township. So it was some really good information, some things that I think we need to think about and follow up on as folks are considering changes to our zoning. The other thing I wanted to ask people to think about is that now that we've had most of the sustainability series programs that we originally envisioned, I think we're due for some fresh ideas for programming, and I didn't know whether anybody had ideas or thoughts on programming that you think might be helpful to the community, might be interesting topics that we hadn't already covered.
I remember.
Keith, oh, go ahead,
Oh,
Josh.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Didn't see you, Keith.
Go ahead.
I have an idea from the past that I think somebody might have brought up about possible field trips
Yes.
to an item of interest. My basement being one, and it's not a dungeon. No, it's I have like for instance, a resident in the township that has a new solar array on the roof, or a resident who might have a geothermal system that has just been installed. Some ideas like that.
Yeah, I think that is a good idea. I think that's a very good idea, and I think your basement might be very interesting to see. Although we should be getting to get a little snapshot of that later in the meeting, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And actually, I've been bugging Anne too, since Villanova Law is, built to green LEED standards. I think they got their gold certification. That might be useful to have a tour through there, a green tour, and have folks point out what the green aspects are. And I know Leo Burnaby as well had said that he'd be happy to host a tour over at the middle school. So I think that's a good idea. Maybe we can put together some kind of field trip touring some of these things. So. Good idea.
Okay, I'm gonna ask to hand over the minutes duties. So, Steve.
Absolutely.
Great.
Let me just.
Thank you. Keith, did you have something you wanted to suggest?
Yeah, actually, with the tours, I think that's a great idea. I went out on one last year to the Covanta incinerator, and although nobody joined me, actually that was great because I got 2 engineers and the plant manager all to myself for about 2 hours.
Oh, fabulous.
So they would love, they said, if anyone wanted to come down at any other future date, they'd love to have people come down and take a tour, and I'd say it's very worthwhile. The other thing, mentioning with Villanova last week in Temple, I went down to a seminar that was given by a professor who specializes in sustainable stormwater management. And apparently they have a whole bunch of sites within the campus that they're doing that, so that could maybe be included as far as the tour of Villanova. They have green roofs, they have pervious concrete and other types of systems that they're doing. And then the other issue that I think is a growing concern happens to be the natural gas Marcellus Shale fracking that's going on. And right now there's moratoriums that basically are on the whole Delaware Valley watershed, which is our watershed. It's the largest unfiltered watershed in the planet, serves about 15 million people, and it's right now just about ready to get tapped. And who knows what that might have to do with our water supply. We don't necessarily have drilling issues that are going to be going on in our backyard, but I think we have water issues that very well could be going on and affecting us. And I think it would be very wise for us to do our part to try and educate our constituents as well as our representatives to do what they can to make sure that our water supply is safely guarded.
I'll make a note of that. I think somebody had talked about doing a program on that, a separate
maybe
group.
for example, just trying to
I
have.
think I had one at Villanova, like 4 months ago.
Maybe, but I was just thinking too, maybe there's an opportunity for Radnor to have screenings of the movie Gasland, which is a documentary. It's up for an Oscar. Maybe it'll win this Sunday.
I have to tell you, we'll have to see about this. I'm an environmental lawyer, and my firm is involved in some of this, so I may not be the best one to host something like that.
I think we had talked about, though, screening movies as part of sustainability series, so whether it's that one or different ones, I
Sure.
think that's always an option.
Right, okay. Okay, very good, thank you. If you have other ideas, everybody, please just pass them along by email. We'd appreciate that. Okay, very good. And just report out, we have not made any further progress on the draft proposed alternative energy ordinances. We're still waiting to hear back from the township on where that's going, and still also waiting to hear about the grant for the electric vehicle charging stations that has not yet been announced. I would have expected it to be announced by the end of January, but I think they're still getting final approvals at the state level. So just in case folks were wondering.
And what was that draft for? There's no updates on which draft?
Oh, on the draft proposed alternative energy ordinances, we had commented, Sloan and I had put together some comments on some draft solar, wind, and geothermal ordinances that the township staff was looking at. And so we're sort of waiting to hear back on where that's headed.
We haven't seen them in planning either.
You haven't? Okay. All right. Okay, moving on. I had open space on the agenda, but Anne usually takes care of that, and she's not here tonight, so we'll skip right on over that to our community environmental awareness, which we turn back to Josh, and he is going to give a presentation on residential geothermal HVAC case study, which takes us right on back to his basement.
It's a nice basement. lot of crickets, those little cave crickets. But other than that, it's looking pretty good right now. So I had installed this geothermal system in my house about a little over a year and a half ago, or about a year and a half ago, and I promised that after I had some data on how my system was running, I would come back and present. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to give you a little bit of background, and then we'll go into the nitty-gritty. And so you might be asking, well, why did I choose to go with a geothermal system? I had some problems with my existing system. I had an oil heat system with a standard central air conditioner. The air conditioner was old, and I had my oil storage tank was leaking. So I had some money that I had to stick into my existing system. And so it was time for me to make some decisions. It hadn't failed yet. It was very close to failing, so I had to make some decisions. There was an available 30% federal tax credit, which is still available for the next couple of years, 5 years. There was a small PICO incentive, and there was potential for another additional 15% state tax credit, which I have not collected yet. So the budget crunch in Harrisburg, I think, got that tabled for some time. It might pop up where I get a retro tax credit. I'm hoping, but doubt it. So what is geothermal? Geothermal is very similar to the familiar heat pump technology that you might be familiar with that provides heating and cooling to your house. But in a ground source geothermal system, heat moves between your home and the ground, either in one direction or the other, depending on what season it is. The ground is your source and your sink of heat. You have to use electricity to move heat back and forth. It doesn't just move easily. You do use electricity, but you do no longer use natural gas or heating oil. So I no longer have a need for a heating oil tank anymore. And I was actually not able to even get natural gas installed to my house. PICO said that there was no more capacity on my street. So where I might have gone with the easy way out, which would be a high efficiency natural gas system, I had to think about it a little bit harder, and geothermal then popped up. But then anyway, the mechanism for moving the heat back and forth between your home and the ground is very similar to the way your refrigerator works. It's a refrigeration cycle. That's how you move heat back and forth. And they've been around for years and years and years, at least probably 30 years in the residential market. So you might be asking, okay, well, isn't electric heating expensive? I always heard it was so expensive to heat with electric. Well, there are two different basic kinds of electric heat. One is resistive heat, and the other is heat pumps. Resistive heat are very similar to a toaster. You got elements that glow, and they give off heat. So all the electricity that you put into a resistive heater, you get back out. It's 100% efficient. However, that electricity is very expensive. A heat pump does not make heat, it moves heat. So for one amount of electricity that you put into this machine, you can move more than that one amount. You can, in a perfect world, heat pump, you can move up to 9 units of heat. So it's like 900% efficient if you think of it in the same terms. So the electricity still costs the same amount, but you're using several times less than you would be if you had electric baseboard heaters. Here's a pretty little picture on how it would work in the summertime. This is just to give you the visual of it being 80 or 90 degrees outside. The inside of your house wants to be 70. The ground, however, year-round is always going to be 55 degrees ballpark temperature. So instead of taking this heat from your house in the summertime and trying to push it outside into the hot air, which is what a typical heat pump would do, you're taking that heat and you're pushing it down into the cool ground. It's much easier to move heat down into the ground than it is into the hot air. This is why you have the benefit is for the ground source geothermal system, as opposed to a air source heat pump system. That's where the benefit comes in. It's much easier to move heat to the cool area of the ground. And in the wintertime, it's just the opposite. I don't have a picture of that, but the ground is still 55 degrees. The outside, though, let's say is 20 degrees. It's hard to pull heat from 20-degree air and move it into your house. It's very difficult. You can do it, but it's hard. It's much easier to pull from a 55-degree ground. So some additional benefits that I feel I got out of this project was there's waste heat created in this machine, and that waste heat I'm sticking into my hot water tank. So the water that I use to wash dishes, take showers, and wash your hands and whatnot, is, especially in the summertime, it's almost free. The outside compressor that you have that's so ubiquitous in the area in the summertime that clicks on and off really loud, no more of that. It's totally silent. There's no more outside unit. You don't see anything from the outside of the house. The unit itself is smaller in my basement. Doesn't take up as much room as my furnace did. The refrigerant is ozone safe that's in the system, and I have a nice new air filter that came with it. It's much better than the old system I had. So here's a picture of my front yard. Looking from my house toward the street. This is about a, I think it's 80-foot trench, 80 foot long. It was about 8 feet deep from the grass down. It's about 4 feet wide. And this is the loop, the coil that they're sticking in the ground. It's plastic piping. And it goes in a sort of like a slinky that you sort of smushed flat. And it goes all the way out to the end of the trench. And then you'll see that return line coming back. There's one straight line coming back. That's the loop line coming back to the house. There's 5 of these in my front yard, 5 of what you're looking at. And the idea is that the more contact that tubing has with the earth, the better the heat transfer you get.
So you have 5 trenches?
I have 5 trenches, yes. This is called a horizontal system. There's another system that you're probably more familiar with. That's called the vertical. That's a vertical system where they drill wells, and they go about, let's say they go 400 feet down, and then come back up. That would be a vertical system. This is a horizontal system. I chose horizontal. If I had to do it again, I probably would go vertical. I now have settling in my front yard, and my front yard looks like a roller coaster. So probably wouldn't go this way again, but. It's working in terms of the functionality. It is working.
Why did you choose it initially, Josh?
I had such a bad crabgrass problem. I was excited to get a brand new front yard.
Okay.
It sort of turned around and bit me. But here's a picture of some of the equipment in my basement. On the upper left, you'll see I have a new water tank that sits aside of my old water tank. The new one is there for the heat recovery that I talked about, that free hot water that you get in the summertime. And the bottom is kind of hard to see, but you'll see the unit itself is standing on the left. It's a high-tech, all-in-one unit. The compressor's in there, the fan is in there, the filter system's in there. And you'll see a blue drum that they were using to fill my loop. All that piping, they have to charge it full of what I believe was a methanol water mixture. And the methanol is for freeze protection purposes. In fact, that loop right now at my house is running around 24 degrees is how cold that loop is out underground. It's chilly, but you can still get rid of heat, believe it or not. So there's been some bugs. I've had a little bit of problems. I have an old house. It's leaky. It's not well insulated. This system puts out about 100-degree air in the wintertime. And a typical gas or oil furnace, that puts out really hot air. So they're essentially oversized, these traditional systems. So you can hide faults. If you've undersized it a bit, it doesn't matter. It blows the heat into the house so fast you'd never even know. This is much more precise in sizing. So if you've miscalculated a little bit in terms of how efficient your house holds heat in, you'll notice it. I notice it on high wind days. I'll notice that my system doesn't shut off. It stays on long. I have a poor insulated house, so on extremely cold days, I'll notice that it's not meeting the set points that we had calculated that it would meet. And the thermostats that come with it they haven't really caught up with geothermal technology. They're not designed for geothermal systems yet. I'm sure there probably are some on the market now, but I don't have one. Or I didn't, I should say, in the beginning. So all this being, these bugs that I'm talking about, it mean that my backup heat, which is the toasters, those electric toasters, the resistive heat, they have actually come on during the wintertime, on and off. You'll notice when they come on because you'll feel really hot air coming out. And you'll be like, oh, something's not right here. So I'm always comfortable, but you know that the electric meter's spinning a little bit more than it has to spin. These are bugs that I'm still working to iron out. Most of them I've already ironed out. The big thing is going to be getting my house sealed and insulated properly. That'll be the big thing. So here's some economics. This is my PICO bill. Let's go right into it. Here's my costs over the past 4.5 years. Those big humps you see on the left-hand side, those are my winter heating costs. And those are my fuel oil deliveries that you're seeing. This is my electric and my fuel oil mixed together. This is my total costs. This includes lighting, this includes my refrigerators, this includes more than just HVAC, but you get an idea of where the heating season is. And then right above, so for instance, if you can see my little arrow right there on March 07, that's the peak of the heating season in 2007. And then down here, these little peaks, this is the summer season that you're seeing. This is my air conditioner running. So you can see that it's quite a bit less expensive to air condition your house than it is to heat your house with oil. Same thing goes with natural gas. This would be very similar with natural gas. Might not be so pronounced, but it would be similar. And then the dark line, the dark vertical line right there in September 2009 is the installation of my geothermal system. And if you track this horizontal black line, which is the rolling total, the annual rolling total of my utility cost, you'll see it dive down about 40% after I installed that geothermal system. I'm no longer buying oil, so now all I'm paying for is electricity. And you will notice that my electric bills, in the wintertime, they did go up. I did have to pay for that electricity, but much cheaper than the oil that I was buying before. So this is, I was happy to see this. This is what I had hoped for. I almost met my goal in terms of what I was shooting for in terms of how much I was going to save, and I'll talk about that in a second. Here's the greenhouse gas component. You'll notice that the humps look very similar because not only is oil expensive, but it's also is very embodies what's the word, Brenda? Has a high carbon footprint or whatever. Natural gas would look similar to this too, but my rolling total. My 12-month average greenhouse gas emissions dived down about a third after I installed the system. So just to give you some background, all these utility costs are fixed. I didn't use any, there's no variables in the utility costs. I used one number for electric for the past 4 years. I used one number for oil for the past 4 years. So you're not seeing any fluctuations in utility costs there. PECO has recently deregulated last month. This has actually hurt my my economics because the price of electricity has gone up. I haven't tried to factor in weather. I could, but that's a lot of work. And my electric, the greenhouse gas emissions based on my electric usage are based on the actual greenhouse gas emissions per kilowatt hour that PECO generates electricity at. So this is source greenhouse gases all the way back to the generation facilities. Okay, so it includes, we have a little bit of nuclear, we have a little bit of water, we have a lot of coal and a lot of natural gas. So it's real greenhouse gas emissions. So this system, I estimate this system cost me $10,000 more than I would have spent had I done something else. Had I put a new high efficiency air conditioner in and I put in a new oil system and replace my oil tank. And that also includes that federal rebate that I got. So $10,000 this thing cost me. I save about $2,000 a year, equating to about a 5-year payback on this. Now that's not too bad. It actually cost, I had to write a check out for $32,000, but I did get some money back from the feds, like I said, and I didn't have to replace my oil tank. So
Great.
That's it.
Thank you, Josh.
You're welcome.
That was really helpful. I'm glad that you brought that in. Kind of brings home some of the stuff that we're hearing about geothermal and gets us, sort of thinking
Yeah.
more about it in concrete terms.
And this is going to be available on our website. We'll post it to our website, and you can download it there.
Great. Thank you.
Excuse me, Josh,
Yeah.
what did you need from the township, if anything, in the way of permits to resod your lawn there?
Boy, you're really putting me on the spot here, man. What did I need, or what did I get?
Sorry.
The contractors took care of that.
Yeah, I just
the
didn't know if it's like an
contractors.
earth disturbance permit or something like that.
That's a good
And
question. I'm not
and-
sure if the contractors got what they got from the township, or what
Okay.
permit. Not sure.
And then the the oil tank, is that still in your basement, or, okay?
Yeah, so
I
if you
didn't
know
know
if-
if there's like disposal issues with
If you
that.
know of somebody that
wanna
needs
get-
150 gallons of heating oil and can get rid of my tank, please let me know. So no, I'm looking into that. That's something I have to have pumped out and then cut up and removed from my basement. Yeah.
Thanks, Josh. Okay, our next agenda item is stormwater, and wanted to take a few minutes to talk about the WREN grant opportunity that we had raised at our last meeting. Had mentioned that there's a grant available through the Water Resources Education Network of Pennsylvania, which is a project of the League of Women Voters. And they have some watershed education and source water protection grants that are now available. And the grant application period is open now through March 25th, and they have funding available to help launch community projects that raise awareness and educate residents about ways to keep Pennsylvania's water resources clean and healthy. They have a website that has a listing of many past projects. I had circulated this around to the EAC to see if we might have any ideas, and actually Melissa Kahn circulated it to folks internally at the township. Dan Malloy had gotten back in touch and questioned whether this might be something that we would want to pursue to address some of the stormwater topics that we've touched on in the past, whether it be rain barrels or rain gardens and things like that. And so we all talked about it at last meeting, said we would regroup at this meeting to discuss it a little bit further. And in the interim, we were so lucky that Dan joined our team, and he knows quite a bit about stormwater, and he said that he would look into this a little bit further, maybe bring some ideas. So if you want to
Sure.
into that.
I went onto the WREN website and I looked at Delaware, Chester, Montgomery, Bucks, and Philadelphia counties. They had a list of the past grants they had given. Most of them seem to be $5,000. I imagine that's the limit. And some were down to $1,500, $2,000. I'd say 8 out of 10 involve putting on workshops, often combined with some sort of printed literature about the topic. Rain barrels was common, rain gardens, stream buffers, and tree planting. Many of them involve partners. Could be the Delaware County Conservation District or the district from whatever county the project's in. I think there were some universities involved, and then just the townships themselves would be partners. It looked like back in 2006, 2007, the Pennsylvania Environmental Council put one on with Radnor as a partner, and that there were workshops held in Radnor on rain barrels and rain gardens. I don't recall that, but
I don't
it may
recall
have
it
happened.
either, and you had
Yeah.
mentioned that to me before.
Yeah.
I know that we had done a rain barrel presentation, but I didn't recall it involving any funding, because I think it was just Dan Malloy
Yeah, now
coming
again,
within the
this
last
was,
couple of
this
years.
was the Pennsylvania Environmental Council was
Right.
the applicant for the grant, so then they put on these workshops.
That
But
may be why.
Anyway. But one intriguing idea that was done in a couple places in Chester County is they put signage on the roads to identify the stream crossings, and not really clear, but maybe even the watershed divides, so that as you're driving down the road and cross over one of our streams, there'd be one of those little brown signs, I presume, or whatever color we want, I guess, that would tell you what stream you were crossing, just to heighten the awareness of the local drainage. You mentioned there were the two programs, the watershed education and the source water protection. I downloaded the application form. It looks pretty simple, 3 pages. One page is just sort of information about the applicant. Second page, you outline your expected costs. And then the third page is if you're including partners, you give some information about them and what you see their roles as. So I'm happy to help move this forward. I guess we've got about 4 weeks, not quite, but I think we could put something together, but open to any ideas that anybody has.
I just had a quick question. I heard you mention tree planting. Is that more educating the populace or the citizenry about the merits of tree planting, or can it be for actual tree planting?
I think it could be for both. I'd have to look into that, but the descriptions of the past projects seem to be educating residents who lived along streams, how they might improve their riparian corridor, the buffer to the stream.
I know we did something years and years ago at the Willows to plant one of the beds there.
Yeah, I could look into that. I mean, I'm sure we've got plenty of places that we could do that in some of our parks.
I mean, it would also help the GH, the greenhouse gas reduction plan, too.
That's right. That's a good point.
Yeah, I think in these kinds of grants, it's always beneficial to partner, have an education component. And, if you just apply for, well, here we have a contractor for $5,000 who's going to plant some trees.
Yeah.
You got to have some kind of way of, multiplying the benefit of this $5,000. It's going to go much further than a typical $5,000 project. So yeah, I think education and partnerships would be critical.
But maybe we could find a section of stream, and then residents would be invited to see how this is done, and we do get some landscaping material.
That's what I was going to, if we found a specific stream or pond, do the buffer, plant the specific types of trees and plants that would prevent runoff from going into the water, then use that as like a showcase to promote around the township.
That is exactly what was done years ago at the Willows. I mean, the material was donated and volunteers planted.
Was it deemed a success?
I don't know.
Yeah, depends who you ask, I guess.
I guess we could, it's still there, or some of it's still there, but.
I think that'd be neat.
Might be worth, Dan, you and I had talked before the meeting about you're reaching out to Dan Malloy
Yeah.
and see if he has any thoughts, because, he probably, has a good sense as to where something might be needed, where things have worked in the past and where they haven't worked.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to know of a little place where there's an erosion problem going on or some water quality issue that we could, start to make a real improvement there.
Right.
I like that idea better than let's make another brochure and use all this paper and.
Right. And we are trying to put as much information as we can up on the web so it's accessible to everybody. But something that's really on the ground. So I think that sounds like a good idea. Ask him if he has some thoughts about that. You're mentioning signage too. I think that's important, because then that's a long-term educational. It goes beyond whatever you just do that day. So I think that
I know
would be a
down
good
at the
component.
community farm, there's a sort of a board there that talks about what they're up to there, and so you could do something like that, just a small display sign, permanent display sign,
Right.
along the stream that's maybe on a hiking trail that explains what was done here and why and what the improvements are.
Keith?
Yeah, I just learned a lot about streams actually this past weekend. There was the Delaware County Environmental Summit at the John Hines Environmental Refuge down in Tinicum, right there by the airport. I never knew actually that all of our water that it flows through Radnor Township goes to the Darby Creek system and then ends up there. But I think that's a great idea. I was also wondering if maybe there might be some thoughts on doing something about fertilizer runoff and all the nitrogen that ends up going into our streams and creating potential dead zones down in the wildlife refuge and those issues that are related to that. And when we're talking about trees, I've always been curious. It seems to me, I grew up here as a kid, and I was out of the area for quite a while. Now I'm back. It seems to me that there's a lot less tree cover in Radnor than there used to be. And I'm just wondering if we have any sort of aerial mapping capabilities or anything that's looked at the tree cover that's used to exist, and maybe how it's progressed over the years, or maybe we have more. Maybe I'm just looking at the other
I know
way.
Matt Bauman has a lot of resources, aerial type resources, and so if you're interested in that, I mean, you might want to reach out to him, because I know he's got things that he's shown to the EAC that are aerial, but it's not. But it's like mapping. It's not just aerial photographs. So you might want to touch base.
The state also invests in publicly available data sets for tree coverage. I know I was looking at one for Pennsylvania's DNRC. I think it's the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation. They have publicly available data sets for land cover or tree cover.
And is Radnor WREN?
Yes.
Yes. It's Water Resources Education Network.
So I think that sounds like a good
Yeah, I'll give
next
Dan a
step.
call.
Yeah.
And I'll do a little more digging on just the application process. And
Okay.
I really just sort of looked at the list of past projects
All
at this
right.
point.
And then when you get some ideas, reach back out to me, and then we can coordinate. Or, feel free to send an email to the group. You're on the email list now. Because between meetings, we do a lot of emailing just to kind of keep the ball moving forward. And if the deadline for this is March, we'll have to move the ball forward pretty quickly.
Yep.
So, okay. Great. Thank you. Okay, the next item is our liaison reports. Skip, do you have any report or any information from the Planning Commission that you'd like to share?
We have 2 new members,
Great.
Kathy Bogosian and Ken Kearns. And they'll be at the March meeting. We, as it turns out, tabled everything, I think, earlier this month for a variety of reasons, so they'll have their chance to weigh in on about 4 different projects.
Okay.
And I see that we're now getting the Planning Commission agenda sent to the EAC, and I guess and vice versa. So that'll be useful going forward as well, I think.
Good, good. Yeah, right. And if there are particular issues that you think we should weigh in on, definitely let us know, because even though we see the agenda, we don't always really necessarily know that there's some issue going on there.
Sometimes it's after the fact. You have to see the plan and see if they're removing too many trees, or,
Okay.
is there a riparian buffer or not in a particular project, things like that. But so it is kind of hard to anticipate it.
Okay.
But this meeting tends to be after that meeting, so
Okay, so,
nothing that immediately had to be addressed from February to this. But
okay.
let you know.
All right, great, thank
Okay.
you. All right, then we'll move on to the Board of Health, and Genevieve was going to follow up on the Delaware County Department of Health proposal, right? Give some additional
Yes.
information.
Thank you. I sent out some information to people, it was last night though, as far as the Johns Hopkins executive summary, the Board of Health's statement, position paper, and then the resolution from the Board of Commissioners for a health department in Delaware County. The Johns Hopkins executive summary, it was sort of an incidental finding. I'm not exactly sure what their what their purpose of their study was about. It was done. I'm not even sure a year or two ago when it was actually done. But in their interviewing process, a lot of the participants in the study kept talking about how that they wanted a community or county Department of Public Health. There's also been, for a while now, the League of Women Voters have also been very supportive in developing a county health department, and have actually did a presentation to the Board of Health, and it was sort of all at the same time. The League of Women Voters, this executive summary from Johns Hopkins came about at the same time as far as supporting a county Department of Public Health. And one of the points in the Board of Health's paper is it talks about, we got this information from the League of Women Voters, that without having, because we don't have a health department, we actually lose money, over $1 million in emergency preparedness fundings that is being lost because we don't have the county health department, and that there's a number of, just on a county level and a township level, that there might be monies that are being spent by a lot of the different townships, that if we were at a county level, those monies could just be spent at one place. I also got the Drexel University did a study for York County to see as far as the feasibility of York County Health Department. looking at what was existing and putting into place a county health department there. And they talked about, as far as some of the costs that has been brought up, as far as, the $1 million for our emergency preparedness, and then looking at the cost of putting the, sort of establishing the community health department, is there does seem to be a lot of some categorical grants and support grants from the state and federal government for setting up and establishing the county health department. Other bonuses from having a health department is just effective standards and consistency of overseeing public health matters, communicable diseases, health prevention. One thing that got pointed out is when the year that the flu, we felt that there was going to be a big flu epidemic, and we had all the different flu vaccines, that we actually in our township had a problem getting the vaccines, whereas places that had their health departments, because I work in the city of Philadelphia, so Philadelphia County has their own health department, they had a better relationship with the state as far as securing vaccines. So we have, it's a health department works, county health department works better with your state health department, and it's just a sort of local control and recognition of priorities, of the health priorities of your community would be another benefit from having our own health department, our county health department. So one of the things was that we're looking at is to get support from the township on multiple levels, and then to bring, and we got the Board of Commissioners have a resolution, and then to go forward into the more county-wide programs to see if we can put this, bring this up and put this on the table and see if we can get a Department of Health in this county.
Great, and all of those things that you had described sounds like things that we would all want to get on board. We'd certainly want to have, emergency preparedness funding. We'd certainly want to have the availability to get the vaccines when they need them. One of the things that I had mentioned to you and to Herb, I had questioned about the costs of this, because as much as I think this all sounds great, budgets are tight, and, how much will this cost? And will this then mean that funding that might be going towards something else will then have to be diverted from that? And I just want to share with folks, because Herb did get back to us with an email on that. And, excuse me, in responding to that issue of cost, he says, I just want to share this. As to the issue of cost, I found that the best way to look at this is in terms of net per capita, especially since the funds are available to countywide health departments from the state, and there are foundation grants only available to those counties with such departments. So he says, besides Philadelphia, there's 3 counties in our area with countywide departments of health: Bucks, Chester, and Montgomery. Factoring in available state subsidies and foundation grants, the net per capita costs for these 3 counties range from $9 in Bucks to $3 in Chester. Accounting for this range may involve considerations of health department functions, for example, not doing certain things that might curtail some state subsidies, and this would also affect grants, which would additionally be affected by the aggressiveness with which an agency went after such funds. So I guess that addressed some of my issues. If we're only talking about $3 a person or something like that, it almost sounds like a no-brainer that we should definitely do that to get the funding. But that was really, only the concern that I had is whether it may pull funding from something else. But with that said, for $3 a head, I think that's a money well spent. Does anybody else have any questions about this? Because they are looking for our support in presenting this to Delaware County, sort of taking the next steps.
Do we know how many, excuse me, what other, I mean, the existing status of the other townships within Delaware County?
Not at this point yet, because that was, I think that might have been in that same email as far as reaching out to the other counties to see, or
The other townships?
the other townships to see where they were at, or it might have been another email I got from Herb. So we're, at this point, it doesn't sound like we're there yet as far as reaching out to the other townships.
Right, what he had said in response to this question sort of where are we now, he says that the resolution that was adopted by the Radnor Township Board of Commissioners
Right.
supporting the county health department has been sent to Delaware County Council with a cover letter co-signed by John Fisher, Bob Z, and myself. In part, that letter indicates that a member of Radnor Township staff will be contacting the county council members to set up a time, place for a meeting to discuss this further. My understanding is that Mr. Zienkowski is working on putting that together. Hopefully, at some point, we'll have a date about which I will let the EAC know, because I want to have representation from that group at the meeting. So that sounds fine. So it doesn't sound like there's anything in particular that we need to do at this moment, other than I guess you would like to know to be able to report back to Herb whether you have the support of the EAC. So I guess I will put that question out there. Is there I don't have anything written up, but would there be a motion to support this proposal to develop the Delaware County Department of Health? So at the next step where it's time to put names to a piece of paper, does the EAC support that with the understanding of costs that we currently understand? Do folks support that?
That sounds like a motion that I could get behind.
Yeah, other folks, is that?
I think I'm supportive. I'm curious as to the county's reaction in their crunch right now, too. I don't know what the county's budget is.
Right.
I'm sure it's a lot more than $1.5 million, but, if they're running a deficit, it might be a difficult moment, that's all.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that we can't support the concept, and implementation is sooner or later.
Right.
Yeah, the cost the average number you just gave would be $6 per capita. And there's 30,000 some residents in Radnor, so that's $200,000 for the implementation of a county-wide system for the Radnor component of it. So I'm not sure how many county residents there are, but I'm just trying to.
525,000.
525. So
Maybe
we're talking
550.
$3 million per year, right? Per year.
Well, I think the numbers would have to work in terms of, is Delaware County, for example, unusually populated by township-level boards of health that may or may not exist after you have a county board of health? And on the other side of the coin, maybe Montgomery County's Board of Health would give us this information, or, Bucks for that matter. Maybe there's hardly any boards of health that have ever arisen in that county if the county level Board of Health has been in place for a while.
Well, and I'm not sure that it would replace boards of health that are volunteers, but perhaps would there be a replacement of, we have a township health officer?
I would think that it would be part of the input of establishing a Board of Health, and as far as, the resources, the human resources that would be then participating, which would have, have a representative from every township. It's not going to work in isolation. So the health officer would probably be part of it, of the group. We weren't really looking at this as replacing boards of health. It was, as far as doing the public health, coordinating public health needs of the township, and then and working with the state and working federally also as needed. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, but I don't think.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm asking the right question, because, I don't know the infrastructure that Delaware County has now, such as it may be.
Okay.
And for example, if we have and I don't know if we have a health officer in the township or not.
Larry,
But let's say.
Larry's title? We do have a health officer in the township, because he goes around and checks like does checks on restaurants and the pools and the whole animal issue with rabies reports and the feral cat population. He does, the health issues of our township. So we do have a health officer.
So I'm just curious if Montgomery versus Delaware, how many townships actually have health officers? I mean, sometimes you can add a layer of, I don't want to make it sound pejorative, of bureaucracy, and it doesn't necessarily help. I mean, but I get the sense that the recommendation of John Hopkins and others is that a larger entity with a broader geographic footprint makes more sense, because you can't just protect Radnor and find out that Marple doesn't know what they're doing, and something bad could happen there. So I could see that a county level organization makes sense, but maybe in counties where there is a county level infrastructure, there's very little local health officer infrastructure. And maybe that should be looked at as a possible rationale. I mean, so many things in government, we talk about all these things here. The most compelling things, for example, in greenhouse gas reduction might be things that save money at the same time. So that could be a side effect of this, because the taxes have to come from somewhere.
Right.
So perhaps some of the functions then move to the county and move out of the individual health officer's responsibility.
Right. I mean, it would be more effective, it would be a coordination of what the townships have, and then at the county level, and what, are duplicate services, and trying to get rid of duplicate services.
Mm-hmm.
So there would be one organization that is then taking care of the issues, as they may be.
So if we're not getting the funding right now for emergency preparedness, but I assume we are prepared for an emergency, who's doing that job? Who's preparing us, or who's coordinating that?
I mean, the one thing with the county health department is that we would get additional funding. So as far as emergency preparedness, I'm not speaking that we're not getting that kind of money. It's just that we would be losing. We would be getting more money if with the county health department, that as per League of Women Voters had stated.
Is that an annual thing or a one-time grant?
Let me see if they're specific.
I somehow feel it's probably a one-time grant.
That
would be for the setup of the
It says
commission.
each year.
Wow.
The Delaware County loses over $1 million in emergency preparedness funding each year.
And you also spoke of a setup grant that would help the cost, offset the cost of setting this up as a one-time grant.
Well, there were grants. This is from the Drexel paper, when the Drexel went and looked at the establishment of the York County Health Department in 2005, and they had different monies that were from federal and state categorical grants. Then there was additional state grant support. So they were looking at different, that there were monies available for, those seem to probably be more set up grants.
And because we don't have a county level Board of Health, the Radnor Health Office or officer can't get any part of this grant money?
Which grant money? The emergency preparedness money, or this other type of grant money?
Maybe any and all of it.
I think the grant money that is mentioned in here is specifically for having a health department, a county health department. I mean, we have one, Larry comes to our, Teltone comes to our meetings and reports on the different health issues of the township. But as far as, like the whole vaccine issue, he doesn't have anything to do with that. He goes and he reports back to us as far as restaurants and food safety, the pools in the summer, or the pools that are at health clubs, and different health issues within the township. But with a county health department, you would be looking at a larger picture as far as someone with, it would be looking at more communicable disease prevention, potentially clinic that people can go to and use for their own physical health and environmental health, which is why, as far as coming here, that would also be something that a township, a county health department would be able to help with.
So it sounds like we have a health inspector. We don't have anyone that we know about dealing with emergency preparedness from a health perspective. Maybe that falls under, if there's some sort of public safety that's handled under that. And the efforts at the county level are more focused on emergency preparedness for health and more larger coordinated plans, not necessarily inspections or anything like that.
Right.
Okay.
What our health officer and it does is it's much lower level than what we would get from a county health department.
That's fine. When I think county health, I initially thought like we're not going to have a county board of health that's going to be doing inspections on township businesses, which necessarily isn't bad.
It might.
As long as it's not redundant.
I don't know
would
how
be
they
okay
do
with
it
that.
in, Bucks or Chester.
Yeah, so.
Well, that's one of the redundancy is part of why it's being promoted, or what some of the conclusions that, specific conclusions from the Drexel paper, because the Drexel paper was actually looking more at the establishment of a health department versus the Johns Hopkins paper. Executive summary was looking at the health of the county. So they sort of had two different focuses. But within the Johns Hopkins summary, it came out that people really wanted a health department.
Although I did have to admit that when I read the Johns Hopkins paper, it did kind of suggest that they questioned whether the people that were responding to their survey were the people that were really promoting the health department, and so they were getting all their people to respond. It suggested that a little bit. So
I suppose I would conditionally support it, but like to hear what the county had to say.
can we go with that for now?
Sure, I can bring that back to her. I think it's, that he wants to go, and they're hoping to make an appointment with the county and to talk to the county.
It would be good to hear what the feedback is from the county, and if they identify that there's particular issues or something like that, to, be able to try to get our arms around some of that. And I guess the problem is that it's not very concrete in terms of, what exactly we're missing now. Certainly the funding, but, what it would exactly go toward that we don't have now. Like if, vaccines come out, but we're not getting them because we don't have a county health department and they're only going to the counties. Well, okay, that we could kind of get our hands around that. That's a real problem. I don't know if that was an actual problem here or not.
It was brought up by one of our board members.
Yeah.
So I think there was that problem.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just certain things that as the state health department coordinates with the county health departments, and one of the things is the vaccines,
Mm-hmm.
and there's other, coordinations that the state does with the county, and then that whole redundancy would also be, they would be looking at that. So, they would hopefully not have that, as far as just not being efficient, and
Right.
using the monies that they're getting.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, so, I think that basically people here are generally supportive of the idea, of the concept, with some questions that, as we move forward and you get more information, more feedback from Delaware County, or, even more concrete proposals on what it would mean, we'd love to have you come back and share that with us.
Actually, what do you mean by what it means? As far as...
Like what exactly it would do, this county health department.
Health department,
Right.
okay.
So
Yeah,
if
like
the
what
rep-
services we
Yeah.
could be
Their
getting in the
specific
future
role.
that we're not getting
Right.
now? Or the cost of those services, are they going to go down, or are they going to go up? Or?
Right.
Well, we don't have like a township health department. We just have a health officer.
But like, for instance,
So
you had
cost would be-
mentioned like preventative health
Right.
measures that the township could coordinate. While they're, do we not have do we have no preventative health, public preventative health assistance right now, and that we will be getting that in the future? Or, you know, what will be the end result of us getting a county?
It's more concrete services that we would be getting from the health department.
Right, right, that we're not getting now,
Okay.
so that we can better evaluate it. And I think $1 million worth of grant money sounds great, you know, so you'd have that grant, so how would, you know, what would that be spent on? What would we get from that? I want to have vaccines. I want to be prepared in an emergency, but I suspect that there's, you know, more concrete aspects to a proposal. Like if it went to Delaware County and Delaware County was going to consider it, they'd probably say, okay, well, we'll support a health department that does X, Y, and Z, or something like that.
Okay.
Okay.
I can get back with you on that. As far as I said, I'm not sure. I know Herb has asked for the meeting, so once he comes back, you know, from the meeting and what he's learned, I would be happy. You know, I'll come. You know, as I come to. Report.
Okay, yeah, that
As
sounds
things
great.
progress.
Right. And he had mentioned environmental health, and you had mentioned that. And I'm not exactly sure what that means in terms of Radnor Township. You know, are we talking about pollution issues?
Ozone
or
issues.
we're talking about, you know, something else, air quality issues? We're talking about like healthcare for, or clinics for people that may have asthma because of bad air quality issues. Just a little, again, just unclear as to what it would mean in terms of county health department.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Philadelphia does that they have an area as far as for air quality. That's at one of their sites.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, I will be happy to get back with Herb and, as we're moving along with this, discuss the information, you know, your specific questions, and try to come up with more specific answers.
Okay. All
I'd
right.
be curious to know how it might serve those on the lower income scales and those that may be underinsured and uninsured as well. There's some opportunities for that, especially in this economic climate that we have.
Okay, great. And thank you for bringing the additional information to us, Genevieve, on that. I think that's, you know, it's helpful, all of the additional information that you've provided, and perhaps it even helps you all or Herb as they approach Delaware County to kind of think of some of the issues that Delaware County may be raising in response when they have the meeting. So thank you. Okay. Is there any old business that we need to take up that is still unresolved? No? Any new business that anybody has? No? Okay. Then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming.